Karis here, and today we are going to do a review of my February tarot practice. We are going to chat about what my theme was for the month, and a review of the decks that we flipped through earlier in this month, and I'm going to tell you what my final thoughts of them were, and if they'll be staying in my collection or not. We're going to review some kind of key tarot stats as far as how many cards I pulled from each suit and what cards were pulled most overall. And then finally, we are going to just take a few moments to look at some of the other decks that I use in my tarot practice. So when my shadow work or my inner child work, as well as some of the decks that I use in my deity work. So the first thing I want to talk about is my theme for the month. This year I'm doing sort of a gardening theme for the year. And this month my theme is feed. So my soul's purpose. So how am I feeding my soul's purpose? I did a lot of readings on and around what it looks like to invest in myself and to live authentically and in alignment with my soul's purpose. I can tell you my favorite spread this month was one by Emerald Lotus Divination, and it's called Invest in Yourself. I'm going to go ahead and link it below, so if you're interested in doing this spread for yourself, you have all of the positions. So I'm going to get a little vulnerable, and I am going to go ahead and talk through this spread and the reading that I did for myself. So the first question was, why should I invest in myself? And I drew the 10 of Swords. And the 10 of Swords, this is a little bit of a different interpretation. I know we briefly touched on it when we were doing a flip through, but in this specific interpretation, she's not actually stabbed by any of these swords. She looks like she is just given up because she has met this dead end and there's nowhere for her to move forward. And I think that's really fitting when you look at it through the lens of this question. So, why should I invest in myself? Continuing on your current path leads to a dead end. There'll be no growth or change without intention, and this is the time to find your new and authentic direction. You aren't happy mentally with the way that your life has gone because you've allowed others to choose your path, and they haven't always had your best interests at heart. And that brings in a little bit of that theme of betrayal that is so common in the 10 of Swords. And it's not so much a betrayal in this instance, but it's self-interest. And when someone's looking out for their own self-interest and not for yours, they're not going to care if you're on a path that is in alignment with your soul's best interest. They're going to care if you are doing what they expect of you. And that's been something that I have struggled with for my entire life, starting from a very young age. The next question is, where should I invest my energy? And I drew the High Priestess. I wrote, it's time to invest in your witchhood. Invest in becoming more closely aligned with your higher self and get on track to being who you're meant to be in this life. There's a karmic reason and a purpose that you've incarnated here. It's time to figure out what that is and to begin to live life in a way that's fulfilling it. Let your intuition guide you in all things. The next question was, how should I invest in myself? And I drew the King of Wands. Every time I look at this King of Wands, I always see him as like rowing away from or towards something. My interpretation of what this card means in this position is to take action. Stop just planning and start doing. Plans are important, but if you never carry them out, they're worthless. You can't just keep changing the plan and pushing it out. It's time to start pushing forward towards the goals you've set for yourself. That is the only way that you're truly investing in yourself. Everything else is just empty words. The next position asks, what will come if I choose to invest in myself? And I drew the Two of Wands. I love this card. I'm a planner, so for me, I heavily identify with this card, but sometimes I choose planning over acting. You'll be given the opportunity to seek and experience new adventures. There will be so many opportunities that reveal themselves to you because of your choice and this path that you're taking, that you'll find yourself given the option to truly start living the life of your dreams. The next position asks, how will this change my daily life? And I drew the Sun, which of course immediately makes me think, oh, well, I'll be happy. But I think it's more than that for this. Something, and I can't remember who said this, but they were talking about what the naked baby symbolized on the sun card in the traditional Rider-Waite-Smith, and how the baby was living authentically, nothing to clothe or cover them. And they were like really bearing their true self, and that is what made them happy. And that kind of sticks with me every time I draw the sun, especially when it relates to something like this kind of question. You'll be so much happier and more fulfilled. The enlightenment you find will help you trust yourself, and living authentically will help boost your self confidence and your intuition. You will more easily know when you are and you aren't on the right track, and you'll experience Florida joy all the time. And for me, what that means is when I'm in Florida, that's like one of my happy places, and I'm always just so joyful being there. I just have kind of my depression cloud is lifted, and I'm just happy. I seek to find that often in my life when I'm not in Florida, and it's a hard feeling to replicate for me. But what this is telling me is that I can find that joy all the time by living as I'm meant to live, living in alignment with my true, authentic self and my purpose. Something I need to learn about investing in myself. And I drew the Knight of Swords. You're going to need to be honest and raw with yourself in order to become the most authentic version of you. And once you've made your choices, you can't second guess yourself. You have to trust that you know what is best for yourself, and you don't let other people's opinions hold sway over you. I have a big struggle with that as well. Being kind of like that people pleaser and wanting people to be happy with the decisions that I make. And um, they aren't always. They aren't when I'm living in alignment with my true purpose and my true self. Some people are uncomfortable, some people aren't happy, but I have to not let that dissuade me from doing the things that I know are important to me. I know are in alignment with my soul's purpose. And then the last position I drew was, why am I worthy of the investment? And I drew the Knight of Cups. All I wrote was, you have a beautiful heart that's meant to do great things in this life. I need to remember that. I think we all need to remember that, like, we have something worth giving, worth being true to. And if we aren't, we're doing the whole world a disadvantage. I could be a cookie cutter person, and that might make other people in my life happy, but it is doing a disservice when I am not the person that I was put on this earth to be, and I'm negating all of these wonderful things I could be doing by being true to myself. I think everybody could use a little bit of that uplifting talk about themselves. So, with that, let's chat a little bit about a review of the decks that I use this month. So, first up, we are going to chat about the Phantom Wise Tarot. Oh, the Phantom Wise Tarot. So, just to kind of give you a little heads up, I have two different rating systems. For tarot, it's going to be, a 5-star rating system. And for oracle decks, it is going to be a thumbs up or a thumbs down. I do that because I'm not really a huge oracle deck lover. If given the choice between oracle and tarot, I'm probably going to pick tarot almost every time in almost every circumstance. There are some caveats to that, but overwhelmingly, I'm going to go with the tarot deck. So, all that to say, I grade oracle on a bit of a curve. It's either a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Let's chat about the Phantom Wise. Phantom Wise got 4 out of 5 stars. I adore the artwork in this deck. I think it's great that it's black and white. I also really love the way that some of these scenes were depicted and some of the ways that she changed things up from a typical Rider-Waite-Smith interpretation. It really helped me to get some crazy powerful messages, and I had some pretty intense readings with this deck. However, the thing that kept this deck from being a 5 for me was completely because of the tactile experience. And I know we said it in the walkthrough, but this card stack is not my friend. Like, I don't love how it feels. I don't love how it shuffles. It's just not for me. I definitely wish they'd had a better production quality. But because of how amazing the artwork is and how much I drew from just this 1 month of working with this deck, I will say it's absolutely safe in my collection. Onto the Oracle deck. I worked with the Sacred Creators Oracle in February, and this one gets a thumbs up from me. It has a completely different experience as far as the tactile experience goes. It is great to shuffle. Absolutely love the card stack. Very quality. For a mass market deck, it's fantastic. It was very colorful. It's very vibrant. Paired really well with the Phantom Wise because it is black and white. Quality card stack. Really good messages. Did great with the pairing. So that is definitely an Oracle deck that is safe in my collection. Next up, let's chat about tarot stats for the month. I am only going to talk about the stats from my daily draws. So I do a 3-card daily draw, and I just go through and kind of capture that data and put it in a spreadsheet. I am a Virgo. No one to be surprised. Anyway, so just want to chat about what I'm seeing the most of and like maybe what that's indicative of in my life. So first, let's talk about the majors. The most pulled card in February of this year was the moon. I pulled it 4 times, and I've actually pulled it 6 times since the beginning of the year, and it is my most pulled major card overall. The moon is all about intuition and bringing to light what's in shadow, and I feel like that's really apt for what's going on in my life right now. I'm on this journey of kind of self-discovery and illuminating my authentic self and my true purpose, and I feel like this is really in alignment with what the moon is all about. So, great card for me, I think, to kind of say where I'm at in my journey. So let's talk about the number of times I pulled from each of the suits. I like to look at this to see like where is my focus right now. So we know, if it's cups, my focus is emotions. I'm really needing to look at what's going on emotionally with myself. Pentacles, finances, and like grounded things. So anything that's really earthy and like tangible. Swords, what's going on? What am I learning? What's going on in my mind mentally? Am I having issues with anxiety or depression or anything like that? And then wands, like what passions are really flaring up for me. And then majors, obviously, that means that there's a lot of major stuff going on, just in life in general, and they're big things. They're instrumental things in the course of my life overall. For February, the most pulled suit was the Major Arcana. I pulled majors 30 times in the month of February. I pulled 16 cup cards, 21 pentacle cards, 16 sword cards, and 20 wand cards. February is kind of monumental. There are some really big things going on, which is actually very true to what took place in February. I had some really big life-changing stuff happen. And it was all around. So the rest of it, like cups, pentacles, swords, wands, those are all pretty balanced. I mean, 16, 16, 20, and 21, that's pretty even keel. But to have 30 majors, I think it's definitely showing me that like big stuff was happening, and it did. So I think that's really interesting. And then just pulling back and looking at what we saw overall for the year. I have pulled 52 majors, 40 cups, 45 pentacles, 39 swords, and 38 wands. So again, I feel like those minors are all pretty fairly balanced at this point, between 38 and 45, and then you have the majors kind of up there at 52. I think if we take a look at the next most drawn suit, you see Pentacles. And that to me makes sense because there's been a lot of shifts. We're actually moving to a new place. And that has kind of, my husband got a new job. So there's been a lot of like home and grounded earthy things. Earthy things were definitely happening in the month of February and overall so far this year. So that's a brief look at my tarot stats. And now let's kind of shift over to talk about some of the other decks that I use in my practice. So I am going to just turn the camera around and show you, we'll just walk through these decks as I talk about them and just kind of let you know what I use them for and what their purposes are. So first we're going to talk about shadow work, and I have been diving more in depth with shadow work this year, and I use the Deviant Moon Tarot. This probably isn't a surprise to anyone because this is a very common deck for shadow work. A lot of what you see in this deck is very kind of confronting and honest and raw, and that's why people use it. I have access to the full guidebook. It's unscribed, so I did not buy the full guidebook, but I do have access to it. So it's definitely something that I utilize while I am doing shadow work. The images are very intense. But I can tell you that, again, this is one of those decks where you're going to have very confronting, meaningful, powerful readings, and they're really going to speak to you. And I've had a lot of really crazy experiences with this deck, and I've really only been doing in-depth shadow work since the beginning of the year. I don't need to do a full flip through of it, just because it is on my channel, and I'll go ahead and leave the link to that below. But just looking at this artwork, you can really see how expressive it is and how out of the box some of this actually looks. The imagery is really challenging at times, but it's definitely something that I think is helpful when you're working on looking at your shadow and kind of confronting things that you may not want to confront. But that is the Deviant Moon. I definitely recommend it. Next up, let's talk about inner child work, which is another of those things where I put off doing this practice for such a long time myself. But when I decided to be really intentional and really to, kind of dig into it, it has been so transformative and wonderful. So for inner child work, I mostly use these two decks. These are tarot decks. So the Little Buddha Tarot by Push Kitty and Tarot for Kids by Teresa Reed. I find them to be fantastic for use in this work. But I will say, so I backed this one on Kickstarter, and I know that I think she still has it available. If so, I'll link it down below. But I did buy this one off of Amazon. So I'll link both of these decks below. But I also backed this deck, the Inner Child Healing Oracle deck on Kickstarter. And while I don't use it in the traditional way I would even use an Oracle deck, I kind of use it in order and follow the prompts in the guidebook. I do find this to be extremely healing and wonderful. And I can do, if you guys are interested, I can definitely do a walkthrough of this deck if anyone would like. But it's been really challenging and transformative as well. But let's talk a little bit more in depth let's talk a little bit more in depth about these two decks. I don't think I've done walkthroughs on either of these on my channel, but they're different, but they're both really great for what I use them for. So with this one, I really love the artwork. I love some of the ways that she's changed titles of the major arcana cards. Patience for the Hanged Man. Just different ways that she's interpreted this. And I love Theresa Reed. Like, I think that all of the books that I've read by her have been absolutely fantastic. And I definitely think that the way that she approaches this, like death is change, I think the way that she approaches this is absolutely wonderful. It's definitely kid friendly, but it also helps to kind of talk to your inner child in a way that's less, we'll say, intense, but to kind of meet them where they're at. You know, your inner child is a child. So talking to them with tarot for kids helps you, I think, to kind of bridge that gap. So, like the Moon Queen, but some of these reworkings, the rules, I just find them to be so awesome. The Best Friends. This is my favorite card. Like, how freaking cute is this? And I think this deck is also great to be able to introduce children to tarot in a way that isn't so, you don't have the devil card, you don't have cards that are a little too in your face or hard for them to understand. So temperance, instead of that, you're looking at balance. So yeah, I definitely love this for conversations with my inner child. I think that those how'd that one get upside down? I think that the guidebook also, so instead of the devil, it's the bully. I think the guidebook is really great and well written. Again, I love Theresa Reed, so might be a little biased there. But all of her work has just been so instrumental. Such great, such a great part of my tarot journey. I also have to just mention that the diversity in this deck is amazing. But I can do a full deep dive and walkthrough of this deck if you guys would like. Just let me know in the comments below, and I'll definitely do a deep dive of it. The other deck that I love for inner child work is the Little Buddha Tarot. Now, because I did the Kickstarter, I do have some additional cards, so I'm not sure if that's available, but this deck is such a sweet deck. And I did a dedicated month with this deck last year, and I just find it so beautiful and sweet. I love this creator. I think that her artwork is absolutely amazing. And her interpretations of these cards, they just really touch me. I really love them. And there's so much that my intuition picks up on. And this is maybe my favorite death card I've ever seen, because I love phoenixes. And I love that, like, it's a baby phoenix and it's still got ash on it, on his head or her head. It's so cute. But it's just a gentle and fun way to really talk to my inner child without being too confronting. This is maybe the most intense card in the deck. But it's a way to, like, feel that connection in a fun, open way, but still get some serious messages and some, like, really intense work done. But yeah, I love this deck so much. Such a great option for inner child work. Now, in addition to the shadow work that I do and the inner child work that I do, Something that's really important to me that I've focused on a lot this year is deity work. And I have some particular goddesses that I work with in my practice. And each of those goddesses has their own deck in my collection. And that is all I use the deck for. I don't read for other people with it. I don't do any sort of other readings with it. They're specifically for connection with my goddess and conversation with them. So the first deck is by Samantha West. It's the Macabre Tarot. And this is the deck that I use for my work with Hecate. I don't, I mean, yes, she's a dark goddess, but I'm not sure. Like, this isn't super my aesthetic. But when I saw this deck, I was like, oh, I need this. Like, I need this for work with Hecate. So I picked it up and I mean, I know I've said that I've had profound readings with these other decks, but like this blew me away. I can tell you I consistently reach for this guidebook just to kind of round out my own interpretations. This is definitely a not my aesthetic at all. I hate clowns. Ugh. And some of these cards are just they're fucking creepy, I will tell you. But I will also say I have had astounding readings with this deck, and it has been such a great tool for me to use in communication with Hecate. And she is my patron goddess. So I do work with these other goddesses that I'm going to mention, but Hecate is my patron goddess. So I work with her the most. I don't believe that I did a walkthrough of this on my channel. I'm happy to do it. But again, I wouldn't do any like any other type of reading with it. So I wouldn't even do like a card pull or anything like that. But I'm absolutely happy to do a flip through of the deck, talk about some of the cards, and go through the guidebook, but I wouldn't read with this deck. The next deck that I have is the Isis Oracle. So I work with Isis. I have two decks in my work with her. I have the Aset Egyptian Oracle cards and the Isis Oracle. And I will say to you that the only types of Oracle cards that I feel super connected and drawn to are the ones that I used to do deity work. I would never choose a tarot deck over this oracle deck or any of these oracle decks that I'm about to show you. And the rest of them that I use are actually oracle cards. I have never been in a situation where I have been stumped because um, I'm doing a reading with the Isis Oracle or the Aset Egyptian Oracle cards where I'm like, this isn't actually answering my question. Because I feel like a lot of the time for me, when I am reading, even, with, say, the Sacred Creators Oracle, for instance, like if I'm asking a question, I feel like a lot of times when I pull an Oracle card, it just doesn't answer in the way that tarot would, and it doesn't get to the heart of my question. And in that, I feel like, well, why don't I just use tarot and then I don't have that problem? So I'll pull it. Um, I often use oracle cards in the sense of what's the energy surrounding a problem, or what is the energy of the month. I use it in that way. But for deity work and deity communication, I literally never come up against that. Like, I'll be able to ask a question and I feel like I get such a straight and honest answer from these cards with no, there's no confusion. There's no like, oh, how can I figure out how this would even apply? There's none of that. It's very straightforward, and I feel like I've always just gotten the answers to the questions that I'm looking for. So that being said, let's take a look at these decks really quick. So Alana Fairchild did this deck, and she also did the Kali Oracle, which you will see because that is coming up. My complaint, my one and only complaint about these decks, honestly, what the fuck is with this packaging? You can't put an insert in here so that the cards fit. It drives me bananas. I am in the process of making boxes for my cards so that I don't have that issue in the future. But I hate this. I just don't understand. Like, it's such a beautiful box on the inside. They couldn't have put, like, I don't know, made the guidebook smaller and thicker, or put some sort of insert in there so the cards don't bounce around. It's a huge pet peeve of mine. But anyway, I love the artwork on here. Both the keywords and the kind of subheadings are fantastic. The guidebook is wonderful. I just find this to be such an amazing deck. It's beautiful. It's got really poignant messages. I love Alana Fairchild's work. I think she's really talented, and she's got some really potent messages, especially in her Goddess Oracle decks, or at least, the ones that I have of hers. And again, I'm happy to do any deep dives of these decks, but I wouldn't use them even for card pool reading. They're just specific to working with my goddesses. So the Aset Egyptian Oracle cards are a little bit smaller. Well, the box, I guess, is smaller. The cards themselves are pretty large, but the colors are really beautiful. They have a lot of vibrant colors in the images, which honestly is really great when you're working with your intuition, and when you're working with your intuition and color is kind of part of what you're reading. I love that the characters in the cards sort of have auras. Definitely love this deck. I love the backs too. There are some very intense cards in here. Kali is like this, this is her little subtitle on her deck here: ferocious grace and supreme protection with the wild divine mother. I have found all of these deities to be very mothering and loving, which I know is not necessarily something that Kali and Hecate are known for, is their mothering qualities. But that is definitely something that in our relationship is something that's very key and very focused and at the forefront. I will say, again, annoyance, like, just put an insert in here or make your guidebook smaller. I will say some of the artwork in here is pretty intense. It's beautiful. Like, I honestly think that the artwork here is so gorgeous. The guidebook is beautifully written. This card scares the ever-loving shit out of me, but I absolutely adore the artwork. I love the messages in her guidebook. Very beautiful. And the cardstock on these, I know I didn't mention that on the Isis Oracle, but the cardstock is perfection. It's not gloss, it's matte, but it's sort of like the rose petal finish, but it's a kind of grippier. So these are published by Blue Angel, and I have to say this is like the best cardstock. But it's like such a chunky guidebook. Each of the cards has like 4 pages of a write-up on them. It's definitely one, if you work with Kali or Kali Ma at all, I would say this is worth picking up. And the last deck that we're going to talk about for my deity work is Wisdom of the House of the Night. This deck is specifically created to work with the goddess Nyx. And I'm not sure if like it's maybe a book series or something, because it seems to be very story-esque within the guidebook. But what I can tell you without a doubt is that it works really great with working with Persephone. The reason that I picked this deck up was because online I saw this card. But this deck, one thing I will say is they did not round the corners, and these edges are insanely sharp because this is a gilded deck. So that in itself has been interesting. But the cards are beautiful and they have amazing messages on them. The guidebook has absolutely spoke to me, and again has been something that has really transformed me. And it's only been a few months that I've been doing this work, specifically with the remaining goddesses. I've been working with Hecate for quite some time, but with these other goddesses, I've really just started this work at the beginning of the new year. And it has been really, really crazy to see what kind of transformation has happened in my life, because of these readings and because of this communication. The final thing I want to chat about is playing card divination. There's like one reading I do every month where I use playing cards for divination purposes. And this is the deck that I use. It is the Harry Potter Ravenclaw edition. My husband got it for my birthday. Huge Harry Potter fan. Yes, I hate J.K. Rowling. But this deck is awesome. So each of the suits are Horcruxes. And then the kings and queens are all different characters. But it's really awesome. It's such a great deck. And I'll leave a link to these in the description box below as well. But some of these character cards are really great. Hermione, Luna, Albus. The Jokers, and then these are just the backs cards. This is a really great and expensive deck for somebody who really loves Harry Potter. They also have Star Wars, and I think they have some other ones as well. They're made by Theory 11. And that is my February 2023 tarot practice and review. Please give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel to see more content like this. If you have any comments, please leave them below. Let me know about what your tarot practice looks like. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate each and every one of you. Blessed be.